Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we're diving into something truly fascinating, and honestly, a bit unexpected. When we look across the globe, it's so incredibly easy to just focus on what makes distinct groups of people different from one another. But today we're doing the exact opposite. We are going to look at the striking similarities between Irish and Jewish traditions, zooming in on an often overlooked aspect of cultural identity, the relationship with cultivated land.
Because think about it. When people bring up the foundational pillars of cultural identity, our minds usually jump straight to a few obvious markers, right? First off, language. It's how we communicate, how we pass down our stories.
Next, people usually think about religion or those shared belief systems that kind of guide a community's moral compass and its traditions.
And of course, shared history. The major events, the triumphs, the intense struggles that really define a people's past.
But let me ask you this. What about the land? It's this absolutely crucial layer of identity that just gets so often overlooked. And I'm not just talking about, lines drawn on a map or a sovereign territory. I mean the literal physical soil tied to the people who cultivate it.
Section 1. Roots of cultural identity. Land is more than territory.
Okay, let's dive right into this. In both of these incredibly rich traditions, the land isn't just physical geography. It acts as a profoundly symbolic anchor. It represents continuity across generations, it provides this deep, deep sense of belonging, and it acts as a physical connection to history. It's basically a living, breathing testament to the people who came before us.
Section 2. Trees as cultural memory. Deeply rooted symbols.
So historically, Ireland was a heavily forested landscape, right? It was defined by native trees like the oak, the ash, and the birch, which symbolized unyielding strength in this unbreakable connection to place. Now, over in the Jewish homeland of Israel, the environment is entirely different, yet their enduring symbol is the olive tree. It's this miraculous plant that can survive brutal, arid conditions and still produce fruit for literally over 1,000 years.
And here is the kicker. Despite these two environments being thousands of miles apart, trees mean the exact same thing to both cultures: continuity, resilience, and longevity. Both groups elevate nature to represent endurance and connection across generations. It's a real shared thread.
Section 3. Cultivation and connection. Interacting with the earth.
Now, this connection we're talking about, it isn't just about standing back and admiring nature. It actually requires active cultivation. We're talking about a profound, generational interaction with the earth, working the soil, maintaining it, and actively passing that knowledge down the family line. For instance, in Ireland, land has historically been tied directly to family identity. You have generations working the exact same fields, and that really reinforces those cultural roots. Meanwhile, in Jewish tradition, this connection was maintained remarkably well even during long periods of diaspora. Even when they were physically separated from the homeland, agricultural imagery, the changing of the seasons, and specific holidays, like Tu B'Shvat, the New Year for trees, they all remained central to daily Jewish life. It kept that bond incredibly alive from afar.
Section 4. Resilience through disruption. Surviving historical change. If we look impartially at the historical record, we see a really clear shared sequence of disruptions that both of these people had to endure. First, there were major changes in land ownership that stripped the native populations of their historical lands. Second, physical displacement from those lands. And third, widespread migration. But despite all these deeply traumatic historical shifts, their symbolic connection to the land just kept persisting. Just think about it for a second. Trees outlast individuals. In a world where ownership changes hands, where people are displaced or completely forced to migrate, a tree planted by your great-grandparent might still be standing there. They represent something uniquely stable in what is otherwise a rapidly changing and honestly often hostile environment.
Section 5. Restoration and modern identity. Reconnecting with the land today.
Fast forward to today, and we are seeing massive efforts in Ireland to reintroduce native forests, actually bringing back the historic oak and ash. And similarly, across Israel, there are these huge nationwide tree planting initiatives. And these aren't just your standard environmental projects. They are deeply cultural missions to physically reconnect with the land itself.
Now sure, we absolutely have to acknowledge the glaring geographical differences here. Ireland's wet, temperate climate is vastly different from Israel's arid Mediterranean one. The native trees, the agricultural practices, they are completely different. But while the physical environments are literally worlds apart, the philosophical relationship to the land, it's basically a mirror image. So, what does this all mean? Why does all of this matter? because it shows us that identity isn't only preserved through our stories, our spoken languages, or our shared beliefs. Identity is also preserved through our physical interaction with the environment, through care, through cultivation, and through continuity. When literally everything else is disrupted, the land, and the memory of caring for that land, remains.
And hey, while we've focused heavily today on the incredible similarities between the Irish and the Jewish peoples, this is actually a much broader human pattern. This deep tie between identity, place, and resilience, it pops up across entirely different global societies throughout history. The sources even note how this intrinsic link between land and identity showed up in totally different historical contexts, like within the systems of the German colonial empire, for example. When identity is tied to place, it just persists through massive changes.
Which leaves us with a genuinely fascinating thought for the future. We've seen how the living landscape, like trees, preserves cultural memory. But what about objects? What do ancient artifacts that have physically endured for thousands of years reveal about the deeply intertwined histories of both peoples? Because sometimes the absolute strongest connections are found not in what's written down, but in what has physically survived the test of time. We are going to explore exactly that in our next explainer. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep exploring.